They said she watched. They said she descended. They said she moved like she was replaying something endlessly, trapped in a loop of motion and memory. A ghost, not performing for the living, but existing despite them. That's when I started noticing stairs everywhere. At work, I found myself avoiding the stairwell, taking the elevator even for one floor. In grocery stores, I caught myself glancing toward emergency exits with their dim concrete steps. At night, I'd wake up with the sense that my apartment building was too quiet, that somewhere in the structure, someone was moving downward with infinite patience. And then one evening, my friend called me again. His voice was low. He told me the collector wanted the photograph gone, not sold, not displayed, gone. Because after it arrived in his private collection, strange things began happening in the house. Not dramatic, not cinematic, just wrong. Footsteps on the staircase at night, a faint scent of old perfume in rooms no one entered, and once, in the mirror at the end of the hallway, a reflection that did not match the empty corridor behind him. He said it's like she's not attached to Raynham Hall at all. It's like she's attached to the image, to being seen. I sat with the phone pressed to my ear, feeling a slow chill creep up my spine, because if that was true, then the brown lady wasn't spreading through geography. She was spreading through attention, through photographs, through stories, through people like me sitting awake in the dark, thinking her name. That night, I stood at the top of my own apartment stairwell again. The bulb flickered softly, buzzing with electricity. The steps descended into a pocket of shadow that seemed deeper than it should have been. I don't know what I expected, but as I stared downward, the air changed, not visually, not audibly, just the feeling of being observed, sharpened, like a blade drawn slowly from a sheath. And somewhere below, out of sight, I thought I heard the faintest sound, not footsteps, not breathing, the whisper of fabric brushing against stone, as if someone in brown was already making her way down. I didn't go down the stairs that night. I stood there longer than I should have, gripping the railing as if it could anchor me to something solid, something real. The stairwell smelled like dust and old paint, ordinary smells, but beneath them, so faint I almost convinced myself it was imagined. There was something else, a trace of perfume, antique and floral, the kind of scent that belongs to another century. It wasn't strong, it wasn't obvious. That was what made it worse. It felt like a suggestion, like the air itself was remembering. Eventually, I backed away, returned to my apartment, locked the door, and told myself I was done. Done researching, done feeding the story, done letting folklore crawl into my life, because that's what it was, wasn't it? A legend, a ghost story polished by repetition until it gleamed with false certainty. The brown lady was a photograph, a rumor, an old staircase in England, but the problem was she had already stepped beyond Raynham Hall. And once something steps beyond its boundary, you can't pretend the boundary still exists. The next morning, my friend texted me a single sentence: "The collector wants to meet you." I stared at the message for a long time. My first instinct was to refuse. There was nothing to gain from digging deeper into something that already felt too close. But curiosity has its own gravity, and somewhere beneath that, something darker, the sense that this wasn't optional anymore, that once you notice certain things, the noticing itself becomes a doorway. We met in a quiet cafe outside the city, the kind of place where the sunlight comes in clean through wide windows and everything feels harmless. The collector arrived late, an elder man with careful movements and eyes that seemed permanently tired. He didn't order coffee, he didn't waste time. He slid a folder across the table toward me. Inside were photocopies of letters, not many, just enough. The handwriting was elegant, old-fashioned, The ink faded as if the words were dissolving back into time. I skimmed the first page, expecting melodrama. Instead, it read like someone trying desperately to sound normal while describing the impossible. We thought leaving would end it. We thought the sea would break the chain. But the veil is not left behind. She is quieter here, but she is here. The collector watched my face carefully. "You understand," he said, voice low. It wasn't a question. I swallowed. "These are from America?" He nodded once. An English family came over in the late 19th century. They brought belongings, furniture, portraits, a trunk of personal effects, and something else. His fingers tapped the folder, twice, like punctuation. They never named her directly in the letters, but the descriptions. He hesitated, as if even speaking it aloud made summon attention. Always the stairs, always the figure, always the feeling of being followed. I looked again. Another line stood out, underlined hard enough to tear the paper. She does not rage, she does not cry out, she only descends again and again as if searching for the moment she was lost. I felt a chill spread through my chest. "Why bring this to me?" I asked. The collector's mouth tightened because the photograph appeared in my collection 2 months ago, and since then, my house has not been entirely mine. He leaned forward slightly, lowering his voice even more. "I've collected strange things for decades, objects with histories, artifacts people swear are cursed. Most of it is nonsense, stories people tell themselves, but this..." His eyes flicked briefly toward the cafe staircase in the corner, leading up to a small loft seating area. "This is different. It doesn't feel like an object, it feels like an invitation." The word sat between us. Invitation. I thought of the idea that had been growing in my mind like mold, that the Brown Lady wasn't bound to Raynham Hall, but to being seen, to being remembered, to being carried forward by attention. "What do you want me to do?" I asked, though part of me already knew. "I want you to take it," he said simply. My stomach dropped. He opened the folder again, pulling out a sealed envelope. Even through the paper I could feel the weight of it. The weight seemed to drag the air downward. He placed it on the table between us like a fragile bomb. "The photograph," he said, "and the letters. I can't keep them. I won't. I've tried locking it away. I've tried ignoring it. But the more I resist, the closer it feels." I stared at the envelope. "I didn't ask for this," I said, voice tight. "No," he agreed, "but neither did she." For a moment, neither of us spoke. The cafe around us hummed with ordinary life, cups clinking, soft conversation, sunlight warming the tables. It should have been comforting. Instead, it felt like a thin layer of normality stretched over something vast and cold. I didn't take the envelope. Not then. But my eyes kept returning to it, drawn like a needle to a magnet. Finally, I asked the question that had been sitting in my throat. "Have you seen her?" The collector's face changed. The tiredness deepened into something else. "Yes," he said. The word was flat, stripped of drama. He stared down at his hands as if they didn't belong to him anymore. "Not clearly, not like in the photograph. But I woke up one night and heard movement on the stairs. Slow, patient, like fabric brushing stone. I thought it was my wife. I called out. No answer. And when I opened the bedroom door, he stopped." The cafe felt suddenly quieter, as if the world itself leaned in. "She was halfway down," he continued, voice barely audible. "Not solid, not fully there, just descending. And the strangest part was that I didn't feel fear at first." "What did you feel?" I whispered. He swallowed. "Grief," he said. "A grief so old it didn't belong to me. It filled the house like fog, and I understood in that moment that she wasn't trying to hurt anyone. She was trying to complete something, or escape something, or perhaps she was simply repeating, like a loop, like a staircase that never ends. I looked again at the envelope, the sealed photograph inside, waiting to be seen, an invitation, a doorway, and in the back of my mind, I heard that earlier line. She isn't haunting the house. The house is only where she was first noticed. My friend shifted uncomfortably beside me. The collector pushed the envelope closer. Once you've seen her, he said softly, you begin to understand. She doesn't stay in Raynham Hall. She doesn't stay in England. She doesn't even stay in one story. His eyes lifted to mine, heavy with certainty. She stays where she is carried. I didn't take it, but when I left the cafe, the staircase near the entrance caught my eye. Just for a second, sunlight fell across it cleanly, ordinary, yet I couldn't stop imagining a figure in brown, descending soundlessly, veiled in mist, moving with endless patience, and I realized something terrifying. Whether I accepted the envelope or not, I had already begun to carry her. I told myself I wouldn't take it. That was the promise I made in the parking lot afterward, standing beside my car with the late morning sun warming the asphalt, trying to let the ordinary world reassert itself. The collector's envelope had stayed on the cafe table. I had walked away. That should have been the end of it. A strange conversation, an unsettling legend, a story that belonged to someone else's obsession. But even as I drove home, I could feel it, the way the thought of the photograph had lodged into my mind like a splinter. It wasn't the fear that kept returning, it was the incompleteness, the sense that something had been offered and left unresolved, like a door left ajar in a house you can't stop imagining empty footsteps inside. That afternoon, I tried to work. I answered emails, made calls, went through the motions of a normal day, but my attention kept drifting. Every time I stood up from my desk, my eyes flicked automatically toward the stairwell door at the end of the hall. It was just a utility stairwell, painted dull gray, lit by harsh bulbs, nothing gothic, nothing ancient, and yet it felt changed, like it had become a symbol rather than a structure. Around dusk, my phone buzzed, a message from my friend. He left the envelope with me, said he won't keep it overnight. I can drop it off. My throat tightened. I stared at the screen for a long time, thumb hovering over the keyboard. I could have said no. I should have said no. But something in me, some reckless need to see what was inside, to confirm it was all nonsense, pushed past caution. Bring it, I typed. The moment I sent it, regret washed over me, cold and immediate. He arrived an hour later. The hallway outside my apartment was quiet, the kind of quiet that makes every sound feel amplified. His footsteps echoed as he approached, and when I opened the door, he held out the envelope like it was heavier than paper should be. I don't like this, he admitted. Neither do I said, but I took it anyway. The envelope was sealed, the paper thick, almost too smooth, like something preserved. My name wasn't written on it, no label, no explanation, just blankness. As soon as it crossed my threshold, the air in my apartment felt subtly different, not colder exactly, not darker, just altered, as if the space had become aware of what had entered. My friend didn't stay long. He made an excuse, muttered something about an early morning, and left quickly, his relief almost visible as the door shut behind him. I stood alone in my living room with the envelope in my hands. For several minutes, I didn't open it. I placed it on the table instead, as if the distance could make it harmless. I turned on more lights. I put on the television for noise. I tried to laugh at myself. It's paper, it's ink, it's a story. But the silence behind the noise felt thicker than before. Finally, I sat down and slid a finger beneath the seal. The envelope opened with a soft tear. Inside was the photograph. Not the famous Raynham image, but close enough that my stomach dropped.